5 years ago, billionaire CEO Adrian Wolfe destroyed the only thing that ever felt real. She stood in front of him, eyes broken, voice trembling, begging him to listen. But Adrian was cold, ambitious, unshakable. "Don't interfere," he said, turning his back on her. "I'm marrying someone else." He thought he could erase her. He thought success would fill the space she once lived in. He thought he'd never look back. He was wrong. 5 years later, a single phone call dragged him into a quiet hospital hallway, one he never expected to walk into again. And there she was, not crying, not begging, just holding something fragile, someone tiny, someone who shouldn't have had Adrian's eyes. And when that small voice whispered, "Don't go," the man who once walked away without looking back couldn't move an inch, because the truth he ran from for years had finally found him. Adrian Wolfe had walked through hundreds of hospital corridors in his life, fundraisers, charity openings, medical board meetings, but none of them felt like this one. This hallway was different. It wasn't polished for cameras or prepared for publicity. It was quiet, dim, almost trembling with something he couldn't name, something he hadn't felt in years. His steps slowed. He wasn't the same man who had once said those words, "Don't interfere. I'm marrying someone else." Back then, he was colder, sharper, built from ambition and armor. A man who believed feelings were distractions and love was a weakness. Serena had begged him once not to choose her, not to fight for her, just to listen. And he didn't. He didn't even hesitate. He had turned his back like she meant nothing. Now every breath he took inside this hospital felt like a punishment he had earned. Nurse Evelyn approached him, her tone gentle. "Mr. Wolfe, she's been waiting." His jaw tightened. He hated how his heart reacted, tightening, racing, clenching all at once. 5 years. 5 years since he last saw Serena Hart. 5 years since he told himself he'd never let her name enter his mind again. But she was here, in this building, behind one of these pale doors. "What happened?" he asked, voice low, unsteady. "She insisted your name be on the emergency contact, even after all this time." Evelyn paused, studying him. "You should prepare yourself." Prepare himself. For what? For her anger, her hatred, her cold silence. He deserved all of that, but when the nurse opened the door, none of those things were waiting for him. Serena wasn't lying in the bed crying. She wasn't broken. She wasn't even looking at him. She was standing beside the hospital crib, holding a small blanket, rocking something gently. Her hair was longer, now soft waves falling around her shoulders. She looked tired, fragile, but stronger than he remembered, and in her arms was a child. Adrian froze. The world seemed to tilt, his vision narrowing as the small figure shifted. A tiny head lifted, a pair of eyes blinked up at him, not just any eyes. His eyes, gray, sharp, unmistakable. The breath was knocked from his lungs so hard he grabbed the doorframe to steady himself. Serena finally turned. Her expression wasn't angry, but it wasn't warm either. It was something worse, something unreadable. As if she had built walls where her heart once lived. "You came," she whispered. He couldn't speak, couldn't form a single coherent thought. The child, maybe 3 years old, maybe younger aged, a hand toward him. The movement was tiny, barely a stretch of fingers, but it hit Adrian like a blow. "Is she?" He swallowed hard. "Serena, is she? She's mine," Serena said softly. His chest twisted painfully. "Mine, not ours." Her hand gently stroked the child's hair. And Adrian felt the old version of himself, the ruthless CEO, the man who replaced feelings with deals, start to crumble. "What happened?" His voice cracked in ways he didn't recognize. Serena hesitated. It wasn't fear. It wasn't hesitation. It was protection. She had a respiratory collapse. Sudden, severe. They needed authorization for procedures, and her voice broke. "Just a crack. I didn't know who else to put on the form." "So you put me?" His heart hammered. "After everything, you still put me." Serena didn't answer immediately. She just looked at the child, so small, so fragile, before whispering, "She deserved more contacts than just me." That sentence sliced him deeper than any accusation could. He stepped forward slowly, cautiously, afraid his presence might shatter something delicate. The child looked at him with curious, sleepy eyes and lifted a tiny hand again, reaching. His breath hitched. Serena watched him carefully, her guard iron. "Don't force anything. She doesn't know you." But the child didn't wait for permission. She leaned slightly toward him, barely a movement, but enough to send 1,000 cracks through Adrian's walls. "May I?" he asked. Serena hesitated, then nodded once. His hands shook. He had negotiated billion-dollar mergers without breaking a sweat, but lifting this tiny child felt like the most. terrifying moment of his life. The child touched his suit jacket with her small fingers and mumbled, "Hi, hi." That single syllable destroyed him. He looked at Serena, guilt swelling so violently he couldn't breathe. "Serena, why didn't you tell me?" Her eyes flickered with something sharp, pain sharpened into quiet strength. "You told me not to interfere," she said, "so I didn't." The words hit him like a hammer. 5 years ago, he had chosen a different life, a different woman, a different world, and Serena had walked away carrying a truth he never knew. And now he was holding the truth in his arms. A truth with his eyes and her hair. A truth breathing gently against his chest. A truth that made him feel something he never expected. A father. Serena looked away, blinking hard. "Don't read too much into this. She needed help, that's all." But he heard the tremble in her voice. He saw the exhaustion in her shoulders. He felt the child's tiny heartbeat against his chest. "Serena," he whispered, "what happened to your life after I left?" She didn't answer. Because someone else did. A doctor stepped in quietly, holding a chart. "Mr. Wolf, Ms. Hart, we need to discuss her condition." Her condition, the child. Adrian's grip tightened instinctively, protectively. "What's wrong?" he demanded, voice firm now. The doctor hesitated just long enough to terrify him. "She's fighting, but she isn't stable yet," the doctor said. "We need to talk about the next steps. And it may require both of you." "Both of you?" Adrian turned to Serena, and for the first time since they broke, she didn't look away. The weight of 5 lost years hung between them. The weight of a tiny heartbeat pressed against his chest, the weight of a truth he couldn't run from anymore. He wasn't walking away this time. He couldn't, not from her, not from the child, not from the family he didn't know he had. Adrian had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his mind without even realizing it. He thought he would stride in, shake hands with the hospital board, approve a few funding proposals, and walk out untouched just like he always did. Efficient, detached, in control. But nothing in his well-armored world prepared him for the sight of Emily walking toward him after 5 years. If she wasn't the woman he left behind, but someone fate had rebuilt piece by piece. Her hair was tied back in a loose, tired bun. Her scrubs were wrinkled from hours of rounds. A pen was tucked behind her ear. Her ID badge swung against her chest with every step. She wasn't the shy, soft-spoken woman he'd once known. There was something else now, a steady strength she carried like armor, a calm that made him feel exposed. And he hated how much he noticed. She stopped only a few feet away, the distance between them thin enough to feel familiar yet sharp enough to hurt. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly, folding her arms not defensively, but as if holding herself in place. His throat tightened. "The board asked me to come in person. And you couldn't say no." Her eyebrow lifted, almost amused. He wanted to smirk back, throw a clever comment like he used to, but his chest felt too heavy. Her presence hit him harder than he allowed himself to admit. He swallowed. "You work here?" "Yes," she said simply. "For 5 years now." 5 years. The same 5 years since he told her, "Don't interfere. I'm marrying someone else." He remembered the moment clearly. He remembered the cold air. He remembered her eyes breaking. But the part he forced himself to forget, the part that hunted him in quiet moments, was that she didn't beg. She didn't cling. She simply walked away. Just like now. A small boy peeked from behind Emily's legs, clutching the edge of her scrub top with chubby fingers. He couldn't have been more than 4 tinny shoulders, messy dark curls, and big eyes that flicked curiously between them. Adrian's gaze landed on the kid for a second, one harmless, distracted second, yet somehow, everything inside him shifted. The boy's eyes were familiar, not just familiar, identical. "Eli," Emily murmured softly without turning, "stay behind me." But Eli didn't listen. He stepped forward, cautious at first, then boldly curious, and held up a tiny backpack with a broken zipper hanging off the side. The zipper caught Adrian's attention. His stomach dropped. He knew that zipper. He knew that exact broken design. Because 5 years ago, only days before he shattered everything, he had bought a small, silly keychain with the same unique steel pattern. It was one of the few impulsive, childish things he ever purchased. He bought it because Emily had laughed at it. He bought it because she liked it. He bought it because for one strange moment, he remembered what it felt like to be human. And then, he left. Now that same pattern dangled from the boy's backpack. His breath stalled. Emily's eyes flickered. She saw it too. For the first time since he arrived, she looked scared. Not weak, scared. As if this moment she spent years preparing for was happening too soon. "Where did you get that?" Adrian whispered. Eli blinked. He didn't understand the weight of anything happening around him. He only clutched the backpack tighter and pointed toward Emily. "Mama gived," he said in a soft, slightly mispronounced voice. "Mama," the word sliced through him. Emily's spine stiffened. She gently placed a hand on her son's head as if steadying both him and herself. "Emily," Adrian breathed. "Who is he?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. He saw the truth in the boy's deep brown eyes. He saw it in the shape of his jaw. He saw it in the way the kid studied him, curious but serious. The same expression Adrian had as a child in every faded photograph he owned. He staggered back a step. "You have a child?" "Yes," she replied. "And he couldn't finish." Her jaw tightened. "This doesn't concern you." Adrian almost laughed if he could breathe. "Doesn't concern me, Emily. He has my no." Her voice sharpened like a blade. "You don't get to claim anything now." "But you left." Her words were quiet, but they hit with impossible force. "You made a choice. A clear, final choice. And I built a life around that choice. I raised my son alone. I don't want your guilt. I don't need your involvement. And I will not let you walk in now and rewrite history." His pulse hammered violently, louder than the hospital monitors beeping in the distance. "Emily," he whispered, "why didn't you tell me?" Her eyes glistened not with weakness, but with the pain of years held in silence. "Because you made it very clear," she whispered, "that you didn't want me." He opened his mouth, but no words came. His thoughts collided with memories he'd locked away deliberately. He remembered the night he told her he was marrying another woman. He remembered how broken he felt, even then, but he buried it all beneath ambition. Ambition that cost him everything. He thought he'd silenced the past, but the past was standing right in front of him, 4 years old, clutching a broken zipper. Eli tugged at Emily's sleeve. "Mama." "Why, he looks sad." Emily knelt down, brushing Eli's hair gently. "It's okay, sweetheart. He's just leaving." Adrian flinched. Leaving. The same word he used to walk away from her 5 years ago. He shook his head slowly. "I'm not leaving. You need to." "No." His voice cracked. "Not this time." Emily froze, her hand still resting on Eli's shoulder. For the first time today, Adrian stepped closer, not enough to frighten her, but enough for the sincerity in his voice to reach her fully. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I swear, I didn't know." Her throat bobbed, but she stayed silent. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he continued. I want to understand. I want to know what happened to you. To him, to everything I destroyed." "You didn't destroy everything," Emily whispered. "You just walked away from it." His chest ached, not the kind of ache that fades, but the kind that cracks something open. Eli looked between them, confused but sensing the tension. He reached out tiny fingers, brushing against Adrian's sleeve for just a second. Just one small touch. And somehow that touch hit him harder than any deal, any contract, any loss he'd ever faced. Emily gently pulled her son back. "Eli, sweetheart, go inside. Mama will join you in a moment." But no arguing. Eli nodded reluctantly and shuffled into the playroom nearby, leaving the door slightly ajar. Silence settled between them. Painful, heavy, unavoidable. "Why now?" Emily asked softly. "Why are you back? Why couldn't you let life stay peaceful for us?" He looked at the door Eli disappeared through, then at the woman he once loved more than anything. "Because I didn't know I left my whole world behind." Her breath hitched, but she didn't soften. She stayed, strong, unshaken, unmoved. "That world," she whispered, "isn't yours anymore." Her words should have broken him. Instead, they woke something inside him. Something he wasn't ready for. Something he couldn't ignore. Something that told him he wasn't walking away this time. Not from her, and not from the child who carried his eyes. Not again. Adrian didn't remember the last time he felt breathless, but watching Emily guide the little Bueno Award, the pediatric wing, made it hard to breathe. He shouldn't have followed them, but his feet moved without permission. Something magnetic pulled him, fear, curiosity, guilt, maybe all of it tangled into one. Emily didn't notice him behind her until Noah stopped, turned, and stretched his tiny hand backward as if expecting Adrian to hold it. The gesture hit him like a punch. Not because the boy wanted him, but because it was so natural, so instinctive. Adrian's hands trembled. He didn't move, but he didn't walk away either. Emily gently lowered Noah's hand and whispered, "Sweetheart, he's just a visitor." Noah blinked up at her, confused but trusting. They entered room 306, bright walls, children's drawings taped everywhere, soft beeping from machines. A nurse greeted Emily with a warm smile. "He didn't sleep well again?" she asked. Emily shrugged tiredly. "Nightmares." And the cough is getting worse. She carried Noah to the bed, covering him with a blanket decorated with tiny rockets. Adrian stood at the doorway, not crossing the threshold, frozen in a place between wanting to help and fearing the truth. The nurse looked at him. Family? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Emily cut in sharply. No, just someone passing through. But Noah didn't agree. He lifted his hand, pointing at Adrian with quiet certainty. Daddy! The room fell into dead silence. Emily's breath broke. The nurse looked confused and hurried out with an apologetic nod. Adrian felt his bones turn to water. His eyes met Noah's curious, innocent, impossibly familiar. Emily took a step toward him. You can't do this, she whispered. Her voice wasn't angry, it was terrified. You can't come back into his life and ruin everything he has left. I didn't come back, Adrian said, barely audible. I didn't even know he existed. Her jaw clenched. Exactly. And that's why you need to walk away now. He should've. 5 years ago, he would've, but he didn't. Emily, he said softly, is he? She shook her head quickly, like she could physically push the truth away. No, don't ask. You don't get to ask. You made your choice. He remembered his own words, still sharp after all these years. Don't interfere. I'm marrying someone else. He swallowed hard. Why didn't you tell me? She stared at the floor. Because I knew what you'd choose. And I wasn't going to beg you again. Her voice cracked at the end, the first fracture in her controlled exterior. Noah coughed a small, painful sound. Instantly Emily rushed to him, checking his forehead, adjusting his blanket. Adrian watched her hands gentle, practiced, exhausted. She had carried this burden alone. His chest tightened with guilt so heavy it felt physical. Is he sick? Adrian asked quietly. Emily didn't look at him. It's not life, but he needs treatment I can't afford. I'm doing my best. Doing her best alone. Adrian took a step inside the room without thinking. Emily stood up immediately, blocking him from getting any closer. Don't, she said firmly. You don't get to step into our world, like you belong here. I'm not trying to, you are. Her voice trembled. You always try to fix things with money, but this isn't something money can fix. He lowered his eyes. Maybe not, but I can help. No, she said again, softer now. You already helped once by leaving. The bitterness wasn't sharp, it was tired, worn out, the sound of someone who stopped expecting kindness from him. He swallowed hard. I was wrong, Emily. Her shoulders stiffened. Too late. Noah's tiny voice broke the tension. Mommy, he whispered weakly. Emily turned instantly. I'm here, baby. He reached for his locket, the same locket he had held when Adrian first saw him. The broken locket. Emily opened it quietly, revealing the tiny photos inside. Adrian's chest tightened painfully. It was Emily 5 years younger, smiling, carefree, beautiful. And next to her, in the photos, ripped half, was Adrian? She still had that photo. She kept it all these years. She gave it to their son. His vision blurred for a moment. Emily noticed his expression and shut the locket quickly, as if hiding a secret that had slipped out. It was all I had left, she whispered, not meeting his eyes. And it was all he had to. He felt so much shame he couldn't speak. Noah coughed again, a harder one this time, and Adrian's body moved before he realized it. He grabbed a water cup from the side table, offering it. Emily hesitated, then let him hold it while she helped Noah. Drink. The moment was tiny. Simple, but it shattered something inside both of them. Adrian exhaled shakily. Please let me stay. Emily looked at him for a long, painful moment. Her eyes softened just a fraction, enough to show she wasn't made of stone. You can stay until he sleeps, she whispered, nothing more. Adrian nodded, taking a seat in the corner. Noah's eyes fluttered tiredly, drifting toward sleep. Emily brushed his hair gently, whispering small lullabies. Adrian watched them, mother and son, his son. Reality settled over him like a storm. He had walked away from the only woman he ever loved, and in doing so, he had walked away from a life he didn't know existed. A life he suddenly wanted more than anything. When Noah finally slept, Emily stood and walked toward the door, motioning him out so they wouldn't wake him. Adrian followed her quietly. She stepped into the hallway and leaned against the wall, finally letting herself breathe. Adrian, she whispered, sounding more tired than angry. Why did you have to come today? He met her eyes, raw with regret. I don't know, he whispered, but for the first time, I'm glad I did. Emily looked away quickly, like the truth hurt too much to look at directly, and she said the words he feared most. Don't make promises you can't keep again. He shook his head. I'm not going anywhere this time. She closed her eyes, letting a tear escape. That's what I'm afraid of, she whispered, and for the first time in his life, Adrian realized this time, he wasn't fighting for power, he was fighting for a second chance he didn't deserve, and a family he couldn't lose. Emily didn't speak for a long time after that. She stood there in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself as if holding together a life that kept cracking open whenever Adrian appeared. The fluorescent lights hummed softly above them, and the distant echo of hospital carts pushed through the silence. Adrian stepped closer, stopping just far enough not to crowd her. For years, he had walked into rooms expecting people to move aside, but here, with her, he moved carefully like every step was a negotiation with the past. Emily, he said softly, I know I don't have any right to ask, but can you please tell me what happened after I left? Her breath hitched, but she didn't look up. Why now? She whispered. Why suddenly care, after 5 years? Because I didn't know he existed, Adrian said. Because seeing you made everything I chose look like a mistake. Emily shook her head, covering her mouth for a moment to steady her voice. You didn't make a mistake, Adrian. You made your priority clear. He flinched. She wasn't shouting. She didn't have to. The truth hurt more when spoken gently. I was pregnant when you left, she said quietly. His heart stopped. I found out 2 days after your engagement announcement. I thought, maybe I should tell you, maybe you'd want to know, but then I remembered what you said. Her voice softened into an unsteady memory. Don't interfere. He closed his eyes. Shame washed over him until he felt hollow. I was scared, she continued. I was alone, and I wasn't going to bring a child into a world where his father didn't want him. That's not true, Adrian said quickly. If I had known, she raised her hand. If you had known, you would have chosen the company, and your fiancé, and your father's approval. I wasn't going to let our child be someone's second priority. Her words hit harder than any accusation. He stepped closer, voice barely a breath. Emily, I would have chosen differently if I understood what I was losing. She looked up now, eyes shining with disbelief. You didn't lose me, Adrian. You walked away, and I learned to stop chasing someone who never turned around. Silence. Heavy, real, painful. She took a deep breath, struggling to hold her composure. When Noah was born, he was quiet. Too quiet. The doctors said he might have respiratory issues. I couldn't work for months. Bills piled up. There were nights I didn't know how I'd feed him. Her voice broke at the edges. I would have helped, Adrian said, guilt ripping through him. You shouldn't have gone through that alone. It's done now, she whispered. I survived. He survived. That's all that matters. Adrian exhaled shakily. You're not alone anymore. She looked away, tense. Don't say that. Please. You don't know if you'll stay. I know, he said, more certain than he had ever been about anything. I'm here. I'm not leaving. Before she could respond, Noah's cry echoed faintly from the room. Emily rushed inside, with Adrian right behind her. Noah was coughing again harder than before. His small body trembled with each breath. Emily scooped him up quickly, rubbing circles on his back. It's okay, sweetheart, I'm here. Adrian froze, panic rising in his chest. Is this normal? Emily shook her head tightly. No, it's getting worse. Within moments, a nurse entered. His oxygen levels dropped. We need to take him to respiratory support. Emily, come with us. Emily nodded and followed as the nurse wheeled Noah out, but Adrian remained rooted to the floor. Watching his son being pushed away on a hospital bed was a pain. He wasn't prepared for. Emily turned in the hallway and called out Adrian. Come. He didn't expect that, but he followed. They reached the pediatric respiratory unit. Nurses moved quickly, adjusting masks, checking monitors. Emily held Noah's hand the whole time, whispering to him. Her face tense with fear she tried to hide. Adrian stood beside her. Emily, he whispered, voice trembling. Let me help. Let me do something. She didn't look at him. There's nothing you can do right now. He swallowed hard. I can get him the best care. Specialists, treatment, whatever it costs. That's not what he needs, she said softly. He doesn't need a CEO. He needs stability, consistency, love. She hesitated. Things you never learned how to give. Her words weren't cruel, they were a sad truth. Adrian stared at Noah, chest tightening painfully as the small rise and fall of the child's breathing became unsteady. His throat burned. Then teach me, he whispered. Emily finally turned, and her expression surprised, conflicted, vulnerable made something shift in the air. Before she could respond, Noah's monitor beeped sharply. Emily gasped and rushed closer. Adrian's heart dropped. Nurses came in, adjusting wires and oxygen tubes. "He's okay," one nurse reassured quietly. "Just a dip in breathing. Stay calm." Emily leaned over Noah, her tears dripping onto his tiny hand. "Baby, please." Adrian stood behind her, his hands shaking, completely unable to breathe. And then a small miracle. Noah opened his eyes, slow and sleepy. He whispered something faint. Emily leaned closer. Noah repeated it. "Don't go, Daddy." Adrian's heart stopped. Emily turned to Adrian sharply, about to protest, but Noah reached his tiny hand toward Adrian again. This time, Adrian didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and took it gently. Noah's fingers curled around his. Emily stared at their hands. Her breath trembled, her walls weakened in a silent collapse. Adrian sat beside her by Noah's bed, their shoulders accidentally touching. Neither moved away. Minutes passed, quiet, fragile, but real. No one spoke. But the unspoken truth lay there between them. Adrian wasn't walking away again, and Emily wasn't pushing him out anymore. She finally whispered, "Adrian, if you stay, everything changes." His answer came instantly. "I want everything to change." Emily looked at him really, looked, and something inside her eyes softened, like the beginning of letting go of the past. Outside the room, night settled over the hospital. Inside, for the first time in years, they weren't strangers on opposite sides of a mistake. They were two people sitting at the bedside of a little boy who needed both of them, needed what they lost, what they broke, what they still might rebuild. And as Noah's tiny breaths steadied, Adrian held his son's hand tighter and silently made the promise he should have made years ago. "I'm here. I'm staying. I'm yours." The night outside the hospital had settled into silence by the time Noah drifted back to sleep. The lights in his room dimmed automatically, casting soft shadows across the walls covered in crayon drawings. Emily sat on the edge of his bed, her hand on his small foot under the blanket, while Adrian stayed in the chair beside her, close enough to feel her presence, far enough not to overwhelm her. He watched Noah breathe, every rise of the little chest a silent relief. He watched Emily brush a strand of hair behind her ear, exhaustion etched into her features. He watched the life he never knew he had, and the woman he had broken, all at once. "Why didn't you tell someone?" he whispered quietly. His voice felt too loud in the stillness. Emily didn't look at him. "Tell who?" "No one cared." "I would have." "You didn't act like it," she replied softly. The truth stabbed deeper because she wasn't attacking him. She was simply remembering. Adrian leaned forward, elbows on his knees, fingers clasped together so tightly his knuckles whitened. "Emily, I was stupid, blind, terrified of my father, terrified of failing. I made decisions because I thought success meant never needing anyone." Emily finally turned to him. "And now," he exhaled shakily, "now I understand what I lost." She didn't respond, but the silence felt less heavy, like something in her had shifted, even if she wouldn't admit it yet. A nurse entered quietly, checking Noah's breathing, adjusting his oxygen. She smiled at Emily, then looked at Adrian. "He seems calmer with both of you here." Emily stiffened slightly. Adrian felt a sudden warmth in his chest. "Parents' presence matters," the nurse added before slipping out. Emily stared at the closed door, heart racing, cheeks flushed. She wasn't used to anyone implying they were a family. Adrian spoke gently. "She's right, he's calmer." "Don't read too much into it," Emily murmured, though her voice was softer than before. "I'm not," Adrian said. "I'm just noticing something I should have noticed years ago." Emily didn't answer. Minutes passed in quiet stillness, broken only by the soft hum of hospital machines. Noah's small hand twitched in sleep, reaching instinctively toward Emily. She held it, brushing her thumb across his skin. Adrian watched them, mother and son, a picture of the life he turned away from, a picture he couldn't walk away from now, even if he tried. "Emily," he whispered after a long moment, "can I ask you something?" "What?" "Why did you name him Noah?" She hesitated. "I liked the meaning. Rest, comfort," Adrian said quietly. "Peace after a storm." Emily looked at him, surprised he remembered. "Yes, that." He studied her profile, the strength in her tired eyes, the quiet resilience in her expression. "You went through a storm alone." "There wasn't a choice." "There was," he whispered. "I should have been with you." She looked away again. He leaned back, eyes drifting to Noah. "Does he know anything about me?" Emily's shoulders lifted in a weary sigh. "He knows you exist, that you're someone important, that your picture is in his locket. But I never told him you didn't want us. I didn't want him growing up thinking he wasn't enough." Adrian's throat closed. "He is more than enough." You both are. Her eyes softened, just for a breath, before she guarded them again. Noah stirred, and they both leaned forward instinctively. His eyes fluttered open slightly. Mama, he mumbled. I'm here, sweetheart, Emily whispered. Noah's gaze drifted toward Adrian. His little voice cracked. Daddy, stay. Emily froze. Adrian's breath stopped completely. She waited for Adrian to respond, bracing herself. He moved to the bed slowly, gently resting his hand on Noah's arm. I'll stay, Adrian whispered. I promise. Noah smiled weakly and drifted back to sleep. Emily stared at Adrian as if seeing him differently for the first time in years, not as the cold CEO who walked away, but as the man kneeling beside their child with raw fear and love in his eyes. A tear she didn't expect slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, turning her face toward the window, but Adrian saw. He didn't say anything, didn't dare break the fragile moment forming between them. Hours passed. No one spoke. Emily sat in her chair, her head slowly leaning to the side. Exhaustion finally overtook her. Her breaths became slow. Steady. Adrian noticed her shiver and quietly took off his suit jacket, draping it around her shoulders. She didn't wake, but her face relaxed, settling into the warmth. He watched her sleep peaceful for the first time since he arrived. Something inside him tightened painfully. He wanted to protect this woman. He wanted to fix the pieces he had broken. He wanted to earn his place beside her and Noah. But desire wasn't enough. He knew it. Emily knew it. He had to prove it. Morning crept in through the curtains, soft and pale. A nurse entered to check Noah's vitals and smiled gently at the sight. Rough night, she whispered, but he seems stable now. Emily stirred awake, straightening quickly when she saw Adrian still there. He stood up, stretching stiff limbs from sitting all night. You stayed, she said quietly. Of course I did. She looked at him, not with anger, not with disbelief, but with something he hadn't seen in her eyes since the day he lost her hope. Faint, trembling, but real. Before she could speak, a doctor entered. I have Noah's test results, he said, glancing between both of them. We found the cause of his breathing episodes. Emily froze. Is it serious? It's treatable, the doctor reassured, but he'll need a minor procedure and ongoing support. Emily nodded, relief crashing visibly through her. Adrian stepped forward. Whatever he needs, the doctor cut him off gently. I'll discuss everything with both of you. Both of you. The words hit Emily harder than she expected. She turned toward Adrian, studying him closely. This changes things, she whispered. He met her gaze. Everything changed the moment I saw him. Emily swallowed. Adrian, if you want to be in his life, you have to be in it, not drop in today and disappear tomorrow. I'm not disappearing, he said. Not ever again. She looked at him for a long, searching moment, like she was trying to decide if she could believe him, if she could trust the man who had once broken her heart. But the way he looked at Noah, the way he stayed all night, the way his voice trembled when he made promises, this wasn't the same man who walked away 5 years ago. Then, we'll go step by step, she whispered. A slow, breathless hope spread through Adrian's chest. She wasn't saying yes, she wasn't forgiving him yet, but she wasn't pushing him away anymore. For now, that was everything. The morning sunlight seeped softly through the hospital blinds, casting a golden glow on Noah's small, fragile frame. Adrian stood near the window, the city awakening behind him. And for the first time in years, the skyscrapers felt less like his world and more like a backdrop to something that truly mattered. Emily was sitting beside Noah, holding his hand, a quiet strength emanating from her tired form. Her eyes were red from sleepless nights and tears, but they held a determination that made Adrian's chest tighten. He approached slowly, careful not to break the fragile rhythm between mother and son. How's our brave boy this morning? He asked gently. Noah's little face turned toward him, sleepy eyes widening as recognition sparked. Daddy, he mumbled softly. Emily's gaze flicked to Adrian, silently questioning him. He smiled, a mixture of relief and emotion, and knelt beside Noah, taking his hand. I'm here, buddy, he said. I'm not going anywhere. Noah's tiny fingers clutched his father's hand as if he'd been waiting for this moment all along. Adrian felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. This was more than reunion, it was redemption. Hours later, as the doctors and nurses moved efficiently around the room, preparing Noah for his minor procedure, Emily remained composed. Though a flicker of anxiety danced in her eyes, Adrian noticed and gently brushed a hand over hers. He'll be fine, he whispered. We're here together. Emily turned to him, her lips pressing into a thin line. 5 years, she murmured. You were gone for 5 years. Do you even realize what we went through? I do, Adrian said, voice heavy with honesty. And I regret it every single day. Her eyes softened, just slightly. She let out a shaky breath and squeezed his hand in return. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a start. The hospital room buzzed with activity as the procedure began. Adrian stood close, watching the monitors, feeling every beat of Noah's heart as though it were his own. Emily remained seated, her hand resting lightly on Adrian's arm, an anchor in a storm they were weathering together. Minutes stretched long, each one loaded with tension, until finally, the doctor stepped forward with a reassuring smile. Everything went perfectly. Noah will need a few days of observation, but he's going to be just fine. Adrian exhaled, a weight lifting from his chest. He leaned over Noah, brushing a gentle kiss across his forehead. See, nothing can stop us now, buddy. Emily watched them both, a warmth spreading through her chest that she hadn't felt in years. She realized that the boy in her lap, the man standing beside her, were both pieces of her life she'd thought lost forever. The next few days were filled with quiet routines, feeding, monitoring, small victories, and tiny giggles that brought a life back to a hospital room that had once felt heavy with despair. Adrian found himself staying late, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He read bedtime stories, held Noah when he cried, and slowly began to rebuild trust with Emily. One evening, as the sunset painted the city in hues of amber and rose, Adrian and Emily sat side by side, watching Noah play with his little toy cars on the floor. Silence stretched comfortably between them. You know, Emily said softly, I wasn't sure you'd ever come back. I almost didn't, Adrian admitted. I was too afraid of failing again, too afraid to face what I lost. But seeing you, it changed everything. Emily turned to him, her eyes glistening. You have a lot to prove, Adrian. I know, he said, nodding firmly. And I will, every single day, not just words. I won't leave again. A small smile tugged at Emily's lips. Step by step, she reminded him. Step by step, he agreed. Over the next weeks, Adrian became an integral part of their lives. He arranged for Noah's therapy sessions, spent evenings helping Emily with errands, and even joined in on playtime. Noah thrived, laughing freely, holding his father's hand without fear. His world brightened by a man who had once been absent. Emily, too, began to lower her defenses, cautiously letting Adrian into her world, seeing the sincerity in his actions. It wasn't instant forgiveness, but the small moments, shared glances, quiet conversations, gentle touches built the bridge that words alone could never span. One night, as the city lights twinkled outside the hospital window, Adrian tucked Noah into bed. The boy's little hands clutched his father's, his eyelids heavy with sleep. Love you, Daddy, Noah whispered. Adrian kissed the top of his head. Love you too, buddy. Always. Emily watched from the doorway, heart swelling with a mix of relief and hope. She realized that the man standing there, once cold and distant, had become someone who couldn't imagine life without them. And in that moment, she understood something vital. Life wasn't about the years lost, but the moments reclaimed. And with Adrian by her side, and Noah safe and happy, they had reclaimed a lifetime's worth of love. As they closed the door to the hospital room that night, hand in hand, Emily felt a quiet certainty. The storms of the past had shaped them, yes, but the future, for the first time in years, felt full of promise. Adrian glanced at her, eyes soft but steady. We'll make it work, all of it. Together. Emily nodded, allowing herself a tiny smile. Together. The city outside was vast and unyielding, but inside that room, 3 hearts beat as one, a fragile, beautiful family rebuilt from the ruins of time and regret. And as Noah slept peacefully between them, both adults knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one that neither distance nor fear could ever undo again. For the first time in years, they could finally breathe. Together. ***.